coat of many colors, a dream in the night, a pit with no water, but God was still writing. What they meant for evil, He meant for good. Young son, walking through the field with a dream in his chest. Loved by his father but hated by the rest. Colors on his shoulders, favor on his name, but envy burns quiet till it turns into flame. He saw the sheaves bow low in the dust, he saw the stars bend down, but they called it pride and fuss. Here comes the dreamer, they said from afar. Before he even got close, they had murder in their hearts. They stripped off the coat, let the dust take the thread, threw him down in the dark where the silence feels dead. No water in the pit, no hand reaching in, just brothers up above with betrayal on their skin. But the pit wasn't proof that the promise had died, and the tears in the dark were not hidden from his eyes. When the world shuts the door and the faithful descend, God is still God when you can't see the end. The pit was not the end, the chains were not the end. When they sold him for silver, God was moving through the pain. The prison was not the end, the famine was not the end. What they meant for evil, God was turning it again. Down, 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 but the Lord was with him. Low, 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 but the Lord was with him. Soul bound throne, but the Lord was with him. The pit was not the end. 20 pieces rain like thunder in the sand. Merchants on the road with his life in their hands. Potiphar's house, but the favor still stayed. The Lord was with Joseph in the work that he gave. Then the lie rose up and the door slammed hard. Innocence chained in a prison yard. Feet hurt with fetters iron on the soul, but heaven was near in the coldest hole. He interpreted dreams while the years moved slow, waiting on mercy in the place down low. But the word of the Lord put the servant in the test. He was broken in chains, but still carried his blessed. But the cell wasn't proof that the promise had failed, and the years in the dark were not lost in the veil. When the word of the Lord puts a man to the test, he can be broken and still be blessed. The pit was not the end, the chains were not the end. When they sold him for silver, God was moving through the pain. The prison was not the end, the famine was not the end. What they meant for evil, God was turning it again. Then came the hunger, then came the need, then came his brothers bowing low for a seed. Faces to the ground where the dream once spoke, but mercy stood tall where revenge could awoke. Come near, he said, I am the one you sold. But grace had grown strong where the wound had grown old. You thought evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save much people alive like only heaven could. He sent me before you not to bury you in shame, but to preserve a people and magnify his name. A beloved son rejected by his own, cast down low before he rose to the throne. Silver in the hand, sorrow in the plan, suffering first and glory for man. Not the same, but a shadow on the wall, pointing to the Savior who would carry it all. Wicked hands will wound him, but the grave could not win. But they meant for evil, God used to rescue men. The pit was not the end, the cross was not the end. When they pierced the Holy One, God was saving us to pay. Not the end, the darkness was not the end. What they meant for evil, God was turning it again. It was not the end. The pit was not the end. Forgotten by men, remembered by God. The pit was not the end.